Welcome back to another episode of Building Enablement, a web series where we talk to enablement professionals and dive deep into the details on programs, trainings, events, basically anything that they want to highlight, what they did and how they did it. I'm Stephanie Middaugh and I run enablement at Divvy, a financial tech startup out of the Utah area. I'm really excited about our guest today, Whitney Sieck. That's how you pronounce your last name, I saw? Okay.
Nailed it.
Awesome. Whitney is the Senior Director of Enablement at Outreach, which if you are not familiar with Outreach, you've been living under a rock if you're like in the enablement space or the operations space. So really, really excited to have her on the show today. Whitney, how's it going?
Oh, it's going well. I'm here in Seattle. I recently moved from Manhattan, so settling in, exploring the area, starting with a new company. So a lot of change, but a lot of fun.
Awesome. I love that. And I know that you have been just kind of like making your name known out there in the enablement community. You've got enablement enthusiasts. You've been doing a lot of like, like webinars and seminars. So I am just so excited that you like joined me today too. Like, that's awesome. I love that you're getting your name out there because you are just brilliant and you're doing some amazing things in the enablement space. So really, really excited to be chatting with you today.
Thanks, Stephanie. I mean, that means a lot. I think that you and I are both so passionate about like helping practitioners and enabling enablers. And so it's really fun to like get the two of us together to wax
I
poetic on
know.
enablement.
I know.
Yeah.
And you bring like this level, like I'm in here with like kind of my like shirt and you bring this level of fashion to the show. So I feel like you're up leveling me too. So this is like, I mean, this is great. This is really, really good. You got your fancy earrings. I love it. Especially in these COVID times. Like I feel like I dress down a lot more than I used to when I went in the office. So I love that somebody's like still dressing up. So I love it.
My
Kudos to you.
secret is like lipstick and earrings. Like
Hell
those two
yeah.
things, they'll just make the difference.
I like it. Awesome. So when we were going through like our prep session, we were kind of like diving into what we wanted to talk about. I know that you have a lot of experience kind of at the strategic level, which is fantastic. And I think I'm probably going to tap you to like come back onto the show later and talk about that stuff. But one of the things that you mentioned actually like really stood out to me in this new like COVID world that we're doing. So like first and foremost, like let's get an introduction as to like who you are. Like you kind of gave us a little bit of it, but like give us a little bit of your background and then like let's start diving into like what your topic is for today.
Yeah, sure. So again, Senior Director of Enablement at Outreach. My role spans not only sales, but into customer success so that we see that whole customer journey end to end. I transitioned into the sales engagement space from HR tech, and I've basically been in enablement my entire life before I even knew that it was a thing. And I feel really fortunate because I've worked out some of the kinks really early on, which has gotten me to this level where I've got some tried and true best practices and methodologies for how to run an enablement function and how to grow it. And I love software as a service. I think that the repeatable operations and like having access to the data for leading and lagging indicators really allows us to highlight the impact that enablement is making. And so today, what I wanted to talk about was like less than I normally talk about on like these speaker circuits around data and strategy, but really focus on some fun. I think that it's important now more than ever because we're really going through some challenging times to inject some fun into the sales culture. And so one thing that came to mind when we were chatting was this contest that I ran in a previous role, and it's called Game of Phones, based on Game of Thrones. So I'm pumped to like go through the details on it today.
I cannot wait for this. Like, not only am I like a Game of Thrones like fan anyway, like I dressed up like Daenerys for Halloween one year, but you're so right that like right now, especially, and I know that we've seen kind of these conversations happening in the Enablement Squad Slack channel of like our culture's really taken a dip. Like, how can we do this? Especially, I know that like here in Utah, we've opened up our office for like optional work. If people want to go in and feel safe, they can, but that's not the case for everybody, and a lot of people are still locked at home, like the offices aren't open. How do you re-inject that culture of, fun and like that sales floor? Like you always know where the sales floor is, like in the building, because it's the loudest floor usually. How do we keep that going in virtual times and everything? So I'm super excited to dive into this and see like how we can turn something like this or like what you did and then how we can maybe flip it into like, how do we do this virtually? So let's start with like, what problem were you trying to solve? So you came up with this idea of like, what we're going to do, but like ultimately, like what problem came to you first? What were you trying to solve for?
Yeah, so I had started in January in my role, and so I was about 90 days in, and really needed a quick win with the team because I was building an enablement function from scratch, and I was working really closely with the senior leadership team, presenting the vision, laying out the roadmap, and it was a lot of like data strategy stuff. And I was like, I need to have fun, and I need to like get in front of the team. And so we were talking, and the team had sort of accepted the fact that when the top performers go to President's Club, it's like a quiet time in the office where morale may be challenging. You've got some people that didn't go and wanted to be there with their friends. They're seeing all those pictures on Instagram of everyone having fun, and found out that it was traditionally the lowest performing week annually. And so that translates to morale challenges. And I said, not on my watch. I was like, let's turn this around. Let's create some energy on the floor during this week in particular. And it felt like a really safe space to just like let loose and try something without being like completely over engineered. And so that was the problem we were trying to solve. It was typically a low week, and we wanted to increase the activity and the energy and the morale for the team that was still in the office.
That makes a lot of sense. I remember last year when our teams went to President's Club, and like all of our sales team, it's the first time that all of our sales teams have been like in person in office for a long time, at least for like me and the companies that I've been at. And there was just a very tangible lull across the floor. Everybody was quiet. Like it was the dead of winter, like here in Utah anyway. So like it was snowing outside and everybody was just like, so I can completely understand. That sounds like a really good opportunity to just be like, let's kind of guinea pig this a little bit. Let's see what we can test out and achieve with that. So
it also just happened to be the week before the season finale of Game of Thrones. So
win. I love it. So when you were going about like kind of creating the program, like conceptualizing what this was going to look like, what you wanted to do, what was your thought process kind of like beginning from like, okay, I know that we have this lull, like let's have some fun, to what are the things we're going to like try and tackle here? Like what was your thought process on crafting that entire program from start to finish?
Yeah, big question. I think like the initial thought process was a bit selfish, right? I knew that I had been heads down and wanted to get exposure with the team. And so I wanted them to see my personality. And so it was around like, how do I get a quick win while establishing this function, which is a ton of like heads down work? How do I build enthusiasm during this like relatively slow week? And how do I get myself a creative outlet? Because I think that that's really an important thing for me being in enablement and why I typically choose companies. It's not just the mission of the organization, which is super important to me, but it's also a place where I can have impact and like express myself creatively and be sort of like the master of that domain in a sense. So I wanted to do all of those things. And so when I started to think about it, was like, cool, theme party, that's so up my alley. And I wanted to split into cross-segment houses. So like shake up their snow globe a bit. Let's get them out of their comfort zone. Let's mix them up with peers that are in different segments. We mixed inbound and outbound. And we created the curriculum for the week. It's not just like a one-day thing. We wanted this to be like ongoing build of momentum, culminating in these like final jousting contests, which are really just minute to win it games. But yeah, it was really fun to plan the process as well. So I got buy-in from senior leaders and from the SDR leaders to really help participate in it as well.
So kind of touching on that piece a little bit, because that was going to be my next question, is like executive buy-in and how do you get that? One of the things that I know that like even I've struggled with, and I'm sure other people struggle with in the past, is like when you come up with a fun idea, like something like this, and you've maybe got some more like mature leadership that have been in the industry for a long time, and they're like, what the hell are you doing? Like, I know I've run into that in the past. Like, what are you, what's going on here? Why are we playing a game? So like when you go to leadership with an idea like this, an entire kind of initiative, and most of it revolves around having fun, how do you maybe kind of like approach that idea of like, why are we having fun when you should be just training them? Like, what's your approach to that?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think people who hire me know what they're getting in the process, right? Like, I've got a big personality and it's going to come out. And if that's what they're looking for, like, they're going to get that in me. So one is like, I set those ground rules from like day one, that that's something that's important to me in my career, and give them some examples of where I've done it so that they can see like, this is what they can expect. But also I set up operational guardrails to be able to like easily report on progress and results. And I say but it was really a team effort with ops who, you know, came up with some really great ideas as to like, how could we measure and track this and report on this to make it, while it's fun, like still a business initiative that we can demonstrate impact on. And so I had already delivered that exact plan. I had already created like the framework for a certification program. So I had some credibility already. And I was craving that creativity and fun. And so I asked my boss if I could run a contest. And this is the kicker. Like, I wanted to literally create a movie trailer for the contest to get folks excited about something while their peers were like chatting about packing for the Bahamas.
Stop it. This is why I love you so much, Whitney. Like,
so I was like, I'm not going to dedicate more than 15 minutes to the filming of this. So I took the head of the SDR organization, and like, she's a trooper. She brought in like a full costume, and we ran around the building doing these little snippet shots that we like compiled together as a trailer. Like, we saw like a broken window outside, and I had her like pretend to punch it, you know, and like literally it's one of those things that's so bad it's good. We like cut out dragons and put our competitors' names on it and had them flying in the screen. Like, it was terrible, but so much fun and funny to like look back on, right? So it did definitely generate some energy around it.
I love that. So I love every element of that. And I think one of the things that I have talked to a few, like numerous at this point, enablement like professionals on this show, is like building that sense of trust. And it doesn't just come from like there is an element of like execution and making sure that you're delivering on the things that you say you're going to deliver on. It's also forming that trust with your actual individual contributor sales reps. And if you've got a young floor, even if you've got a more mature floor, they will respond, in my experience, very well to you breaking those boundaries that they're probably used to when it comes to training or sales training or enablement, and having fun with it. It can really kind of form that element of like a bond between enablement and sales, more so than maybe anything else that you could probably try and do. So I love that you were looking for a quick win. You were able to kind of probably, I would assume, win over your sales reps and be like, damn, Whitney's cool. Like, she is badass. Look at all these fun things we're doing. When you do stuff like that, you already get their buy-in, and they're more willing to, once you come with like a legit kind of certification, you're like, okay, like, let's try this. They're probably a little bit more receptive to stuff like that.
Totally. And I mean, I think they saw the balance of the fun and goofy and weird side, right? Like, with structure and format and clarity. And so you've got to marry the two. Like, it can't be chaotic for them, or else it's a poor experience. So a lot of the structure that we put into it and the support that we put behind it was, I think, what made it successful. So maybe I'll give you some details of like what that structure looked like.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question, was like, let's like peel the layers back. Let's dive in and like, what did this actually look like? What were the pieces? What did it include? Like, let's dive into some of the nitty gritty on that.
Yeah. So the week prior is when we had a movie watching party and got to reveal the trailer to the team and like pulled the whole team on the floor together. And, you know, I literally wanted to have like popcorn and stuff like that because it was a 2-minute clip. So just know that we made a big deal for a 2-minute thing. But that got them interested in like, what is going on next week? And so we also gave their itinerary, like, what does the week entail? Similar to how if you're going on like a bachelorette party trip, like, you get your itinerary for the week, Same with us. And so they knew that there were theme days. Like the first day, and this is not going to resonate with people who don't love Game of Thrones, but I hope you said you're a fan, so you'll get it. We did like a day around White Walkers where we were bringing opportunities back from the dead. And so we were looking at closed lost opportunities and revisiting those and engaging those prospects again. Day 2 was Red Wedding, which for fans of the show know how gruesome that is, but this was the day that we slaughtered our competition, and we did competitive time blocks that were focused on different competitors, so that we could stay in the same mindset for certain like hour blocks of the day. And then, I mean, we had a full day dedicated to like Wildfire, where they were able to use their own strategy, right? Like, what do they think is going to work best to get more opportunities? But remember, like, they were split up into different cross-functional houses. We came up with like a point system for opportunities coming from the different segments, whether it was inbound or outbound. So there was a lot of like rigor around it. Each day kicked off with a themed training around that skill set in order to accomplish it, and a preset report of their targeted prospects. So there was prep that was done for them to help them stay on track here. We even had like a bingo card where you had to incorporate like random phrases and tag it on Gong for validation. So like here we are in the middle of like spring, almost summer, and they're saying winter is coming, you know?
I love that so
just
much.
for fun.
So when you said that you like delivered training first thing in the morning, was that like an in-person? Did you utilize an LMS? Like how did you go about like that like morning training piece?
Yeah, it was in person. Again, this is back when we were in the office, and so it made sense for us to do it. It was how we kicked off our day together. And so everyone knew they had to be there right at 8 o'clock. When the clock struck 8, like you were late. And we had like a predefined set of slides, just a really simple slide deck where we would go over like a bite-sized lesson around each of those different themes. So it's like, how do you re-engage with a prospect that has been closed lost? Then day 2, it's like, how do you approach competitive conversations and objection handling around certain competitors? And so we did these like bite-sized trainings to kick off the day, to rally the troops, to get them excited. We walked them through those plans again, what reports are pulled for them, how we're tracking, and like how the different houses are doing, and celebrating some of the top people from the day prior. So there was like this constant momentum there throughout the week that led up to the final day, which is when we did like the crowning ceremony for the winner of Game of Phones.
This is amazing for one. How did you, so you've conceptualized everything, you've rolled it all out, you've got executive buy-in, like you've now like won over the masses through this entire program. How did you wrap it up? Like, how did you measure the results at the end of the day to prove that like an initiative like this with this type of approach was a success?
Totally. So again, we partnered with sales ops to create a competition dashboard. And so we checked in daily progress and awarded extra points to whichever house was ahead. But what that translated to was at the end of like, those are all the leading indicators to show that everyone's like doing the right activities. But then at the end of the week, we actually looked back and said, how many opportunities were created this week? And when we did that, we had this moment of celebration, because looking back, it was the highest number of opportunities ever created in a single week at that company. And so we went from a week that is typically the lowest performing to literally the highest performing week. And so that also like furthered the fact that having fun and injecting fun in the business can produce results. So we took those results, and this is something that's super important to me because executives are storytellers, and I know that. And here I am building a brand for enablement. And so I shouted from the rooftops about those successes, put together slides with pictures to show how much fun we had, and described like the purpose, the process, and the payoff to not only the head of sales, but also our CEO and our president of the company. Because when you think about it, those executives are storytellers. They need positive stories to share when they're talking at all hands, when they're on the conference scene or talking to the board, right? So they're storytellers, and they needed to be armed with some of these fun stories that showed how when the team rallies together, they can drive really positive impact on the business. And enablement was the channel to do that. And that was something that was really important, because not only did it get enablement some recognition, but it also got the SDR org recognition. And you don't often hear about the SDR org successes. You hear about the AE successes that's attached to the deal. And so to celebrate them in that quarterly fashion was like really important to me and to the company and, you know, to them. I think they really felt valued in that sense.
That's great. And it's an excellent point that I think the SDR org typically like is overlooked in a lot of cases, especially when it comes to those celebrations and those wins. So being able to spotlight them specifically, because we know the SDR role is such a grind day in, day out, that it can be hard. It can be, you know, like your general kind of like morale as an employee can kind of go down. So making sure that you're highlighting that org who does have so much impact on your top of funnel activities can just, I mean, reignite this fire with your entire sales department even. So I love that you kind of like focused on that specifically and kind of like shining the light where it like needs to be shown every once in a while. How long did it take you to kind of like prepare like for this entire initiative? You said that you were working with sales ops, you were getting executive buy-in. How long did it take you to kind of prep for this entire thing before you launched it?
I'd say probably about a month, honestly. Like, it was one of those things that I had the idea pretty early on. Like, when I get stuck on a naming convention or like an alliteration, I get really excited around it and try to find a way to make it happen. So like the vision for Game of Phones happened pretty quickly in my career there, but then the actual execution was about a month prior. Set up a meeting with senior leadership to get the buy-in, set up a meeting with the SDR leaders and with ops to figure out the structure and the format and something that would really work well for their team, because, you know, what I had done in the past might not be like how that org was operating. And truly, I hadn't had an opportunity to really lift the hood in that organization to be able to like advise on the best approach. So I really needed their expertise there. And it was a true partnership. So that would be the timeline of how we rolled it out. And then again, like week prior is when we gave the teaser to get everyone excited. And then that whole week is when we went through the actual process.
Love that. I think it's important for when it comes to like initiatives like this, you're like, man, this is like kick ass. Like I want to do this. And then like, it's important for enablement professionals to realize like how much time goes into this. You can like throw something like this together in like maybe a week, but if you give it the proper runway, the success is probably, you're going to see it tenfold on the opposite side to make sure that you work through everything.
Absolutely. And that cross-functional, like that stakeholder alignment is so crucial to success. And I think that, yeah, you could do it in a week, but then you're the single point of failure, which for any enablement professional, like that sucks. So I like sharing some of the partnership. I think it makes it more impactful, more effective, and it shows that you're banded together as a leadership team, which is inspiring and motivating for staff as well.
And I think when I know a lot of companies are struggling just like company wide culturally. So working on an initiative like this, where you are partnering with so many different, you know, like departments and other organizations within the larger company, I think this can really kind of not only build trust with your reps that you're supporting, but across the aisle too. You're reaching across the way and being like, hey, I want to do this. This is how it'll help you too. Like, can we partner on this? I think that's a really great way to make sure that, you know, you don't become siloed, especially in this virtual world right now, where it's very easy to just kind of like, I'm at my computer and I'm not really talking to anybody else and I'm just executing on what I want to do. I think that's a great kind of way to partner across the aisle there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, any opportunity that we have these days to like bring people together, I think is a good one that we should take advantage of.
I agree completely. So I think I know the answer to this question already, but ultimately, did you achieve the outcomes that you were hoping to when you first conceptualized this initiative?
Exceeded, right? Like, I don't know if we really had like a strong goal or number. We were just like, let's not have the worst week. Like that was our goal at the beginning. But I mean, exceeded my expectations in the fact that we broke records. And then if you think about the downstream impact of that, like that sets the following quarter up for success. And so here were these top performing AEs coming back from President's Club to a whole like calendar full of really great opportunities for them to pursue. I mean, that really set the wheels in motion for a lot of positive momentum throughout the year, where it could have had the opposite impact had we not taken advantage of that time.
I love that. That's so great. What surprised you when you like look back on this initiative? Like now that we've kind of talked about it a little bit, what surprised you either positively or maybe like on the more negative side? Like what are some things that kind of like came out of left field for you when working on this?
Well, negatively is like there were a few people who didn't know what Game of Thrones was. So that rubbed me the wrong way.
Get out. Like you're automatically out.
Exactly.
That should have been pre-work. Pre-work was like going through Game of Thrones, like all the seasons, and then you can come in. Like that was.
Can you imagine if like the pre-work for it was to watch all the seasons of Game of Thrones before you come for a week long? All right, next time I'm on.
There we go.
No, I think what surprised me in a positive way was like how much ownership the managers took in that partnership for that project. Because I've worked with some really incredible leaders where their enablement skill sets came naturally to them. Remember, I was the first person building that function there. So until then, the managers had to do it all themselves. And so they had a lot of natural ability there. And it was really just like me coming in and bringing a creative idea and then helping them put some structure and rigor around it. But they created the accountability while really motivating and inspiring their teams. Plus they dressed up in costumes with me. Like,
that's a win-win right there.
Yeah, totally. We had a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So one of the things, I mean, this has been like, I really want to do this now. Like I might just steal this idea, Whitney, and like go back and do it. One of the things that I usually like to leave my viewers with is some kind of actionable takeaway. I mean, honestly, I think this entire program is probably an actionable takeaway that people could probably do, even though Game of Thrones is over, like you could still make this work. But what are some things that you would probably recommend to, anybody who's watching this that they can grab from your experience, like take back into their enablement practice tomorrow?
Yeah, the contest itself was great, but I think that the biggest lesson through it all is wrapping your program with an executive summary. So don't lose sight of that. Enablement is often that unsung hero, and sales leaders and senior executives, like I said, are storytellers. And so preparing them with those stories is really important. So I've actually added like a step to our internal process within enablement where we articulate the 3 Ps: purpose, process, and payoff when a project has reached that stage of completion, or when we're handing off to ops to monitor more of like the lagging indicators long term. And I think one that gets like the executive exposure, it also helps them speak the same language as the team to make sure that they stay credible. And then it's also one of those items where you start to like really eliminate some of that skepticism around, does enablement make an impact? Because you're able to really clearly show that. So of all of this, I think that would probably be one of the most actionable takeaways is like wrap up your programs by talking about the impact. Don't just move on to the next thing, because then it's a lot harder to look back and show it. Make that part of your process.
I 100% agree. I literally just like wrote down your 3 Ps too, because I'm going to take that too. This is perfect. And I think a lot of enablement folks, to your point, we usually have like the next project in sight or the next initiative. So it's really easy to just be like, that one's done, wrap it up really quickly and like move on to the next one, especially if you've got a small team or you're a team of one. Take time to like celebrate those wins, because if you don't do it, you can't guarantee that anybody else is going to do it for you. Like nobody else is going to recognize your successes. And in order to build a culture of enablement, kind of like a pro enablement function within your organization, you have to take the time to celebrate those wins and be like, I kicked ass on this. Like, look at what I did. And as long as you can measure it and you can give those executives those story points, you're like, don't feel embarrassed. I'm always the person that's just like, well, I mean, I did it. Like, congratulations to me, like pat on the back and like move on with it. Cause I get too embarrassed about sharing that. But like, nobody else is going to do it for you. Like toot your own horn, because honestly, with stuff like this, you deserve it as an enablement professional.
Well, and that's a great point. And I think like your audience is mainly enablement professionals. So think about the tail end of this, right? You've got this like arsenal of these stories of where you've made an impact on a business. So whenever you're interviewing for your next role, you've already got those key stories that you want to share. Like honestly, this contest is something that I share in the interview process because it's one of those areas where it may have felt small or may have felt like silly, but to show an impact like that means a lot to people. And I remember like from a qualitative perspective, like our CEO at the company gave me one of the best compliments. Like he told me that he thinks my superpower is being equal parts productive and fun. And I think there's nothing better to describe what enablement brings to a business. And I think that that's really a personal mantra for me now is like, how do I keep bringing the fun while keeping productivity high?
I love that. And I think that's definitely something that all of us can aspire to, is making sure that you incorporate both elements of that. Whitney, this is such a fantastic overview. Like I am like seriously just so excited right now and like just amped up. Anything else, like any closing thoughts that you want to leave our viewers with?
No, I mean, if they're interested in learning more about some of the projects I'm working on, they could go to enablemententhusiast.com and see that. I've also got like Instagram. So it's like all the fun things that I'm working on, I try and share back with the community. But thank you so much for having me today. I think this was a blast to reflect on a tactical project I did a while ago that really made me happy. So it was fun to chat about it.
Yeah, of course. Whitney, such a pleasure to have you on. Definitely check out Enablement Enthusiast, connect with Whitney on LinkedIn, connect with Whitney on the Enablement Squad Slack channel. Like there's so many avenues to get a hold of her. And she honestly, like she's as nice as she is like here. You can reach out to her and just ask her a bunch of questions. She's so giving. Thanks again, Whitney, for joining me today. Thanks to our viewers also for watching. If you or someone that you know in the enablement community would be great to highlight on this show, please definitely tag them in the comments or the thread below. Make sure to connect with all of my guests on LinkedIn for additional insights. And if you like this video, definitely make sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel. I do try to upload a video as quickly and as soon as I can. And then until next time, keep building, everybody.